the state actually prefers or what they think society will accept. If we want people to make a choice for the family, we have to assert that the family is the right choice, and that having a family, A, that children are a benefit and a blessing to society, and B, that people should engage in marital life, and they have a responsibility to produce the next generation and to raise it properly. Now, you see, you've argued most of your position has come from a sort of a liberal Marxist standpoint, that it's state power that is being enhanced. But the most ferocious attacks on the family have actually been from the homosexual lobby. Herbert Marcuse, who you quoted, was a homosexual. Many of the feminists who attacked the family were lesbians. When the family was the normative moral good of society, they felt themselves on the periphery, i.e. they were called perverts. They wanted to undermine the normative position so that their relationships and their sorts of behaviour would then become morally acceptable. So what you see is that the normative morality was undermined through liberalism and Marxism. Now, if you're going to reverse that, you've got to start saying, this is the right way again, this is right and this is wrong. And it seems to me in your argument that because you're not prepared to put content into that sense of what is right and wrong, that you're just bound to the liberal argument, and therefore there's no way out, as Tony said. There's no way out. When people say, well, we've made this choice, the state has to then come in and support it. Instead of the state saying, you've made the wrong choice, you face the consequences. If there's no longer morality and consequences to making the wrong moral decisions, well then, family is no longer sustainable. So what I'm basically saying is, in order for the family to be strong again, the society was based on Christian morality. You'd have to go back to Christian morality. You'd have to go back to content. If you stick on a libertarian position, everything is chaotic, and it's only the state who can provide assistance then.
Okay. I didn't say you couldn't judge at all. What I would be against is a legal compulsion to entering into what is a traditional family. I think, A, it wouldn't work, and B, I don't think the end would justify the means.
But people were legally obliged to stay together, weren't they? That was the marital contract.
Yeah, I'd agree about divorce.
And also, non-marital relationships, such as homosexual ones, were illegal. So the state came in as a judge and passed laws. They did actually coerce people to behave in certain ways. That's why the family existed.
It's a particularly conservative thing to be criminalising homosexuality.
Well, it's traditional conservatism, yeah. Neoliberalism, no.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is before it was.
All right, I'll go to divorce first. What I would be against is effectively divorce where people just change their minds. Because you're saying on the one hand, I want the state to recognise this relationship, and then on the other hand, you're saying, well, I've changed my mind now, I don't want it anymore. I don't think that should be supported. I think if somebody's committed adultery or they're being severely abused or subject to cruel treatment, then I don't think very many people would want to prevent that happening. But as for homosexuality, I don't really see, it's not the proclivity that's the issue, it's the politics of the people. And you're right that when homosexuality was legalised, it was said in Parliament that it would remain a taboo, and of course that hasn't happened. And some of these sociological and cultural changes have come about through a deliberate engineering by the Marxists. But I don't think, A, criminalising it's morally justified if somebody's doing something that isn't directly harming the state. And also, I don't think it would...
It's harming society. Don't forget, it was a criminal activity for thousands of years. We're in a very new epoch now, which is saying it's no longer criminal. You see, and therefore, the state is passing moral judgments. Laws strengthen moral judgments and suggest moral judgments. If you pass a law which says homosexuality is acceptable, therefore you're giving up moral normative behaviour.
To some extent, it's going to be very difficult to reverse the cultural changes that have taken place. But there are other... I agree, the law is the strongest method of enforcing a moral judgment, but you can still advocate one particular lifestyle without actually making it a criminal offence. I mean, for example, it's not a criminal offence to live with several women and call them all your wives. But the state's not going to sanction that. It's not going to condone it. It's going to say, no, we're not going to sanction all those relationships because we think it's not productive and it's not part of our culture.
They do sanction it.
There's
2,000 polygamous marriages, which they don't, if it's you or me as a British citizen decide to take a harem of wives, we're not allowed. But if an immigrant came into the country with several wives, then we have to pay for all of that. It's their right.
Yeah.
You're going to stop that.
Yeah. I was talking about it in an ideal, hypothetical sense.
Oh,
Yeah, I know, unfortunately, that there is that interloping culture being imposed on us. But yeah, but going back to homosexuality, there was a case, I can't remember his name now, but the man who broke the enigma, who was persecuted, I think, and castrated just because he was a homosexual, despite all the services to the country. And unfortunately, he's remembered for all his proclivities. He's remembered for his proclivities instead of what he'd achieved, really.
Do you not think it's a side issue? I mean, I think you could criminalise, I think that's perhaps something you'd advocate from the logical outcome of what you've said. You could criminalise homosexuality tomorrow, but the kind of decline in traditional married life would not be reversed.
At the risk of repeating myself, I don't think, even if you did criminalise it, you'd actually have the desired effect anyway. You'd probably make martyrs out of the people who were affected by it. You wouldn't change all the attitudes, even if you did make it a criminal offence.
But what you've said, basically, in your speech, is that the traditional family was very good for society. It raised well-behaved children who were productive and positive. Now, that traditional family was based on the moral and legal codes at the time. If you want to go back to that, you'd have to go back to those moral and legal codes. You can't have a mix of today's liberalism and yesterday's effective families.
Yeah,
If you're going to
that
continue the liberalism,
being used to attack
you will never get the family again. You see, the three groups that have undermined the family, the Marxist, the homosexual lobby, and the feminist lobby, they have won the day. You'd have to take those groups on and reverse their triumphs in order to re-establish the family.
That's
just historical.
Their very existence and their attack against the family, basically, they're using victimhood as a way of achieving their goal, which is to actually get privileges, not equality, to get privileges.
People are using their victimhood and appropriate.
They are. Now, I'm a Christian. I believe that the Bible is the word of God, and I believe that when it says that righteousness exalteth the nation, and sin is a reproach to any people, I believe that, and I believe that this country has gone down to a moral road which is ruinous to the nation, because the nation has abandoned the family. The people have abandoned the family, but they've been assisted by the nation, that is, the Parliament and the laws that they've enacted, which have undermined the family. And even the parents now cannot chastise their children without fear of the state intervening. You know, in loving chastisement. You've got charities that are set up by Christians who believe what I'm advocating now, who now have gone along with that and are campaigning actively with the money that people donate to actually intervene with families who are lovingly chastised, to try and stop them from smacking their children. And, you know, it's been tipped upside down. It was many examples. Go through the schools, how we undermine the family with the teaching.
I think, we can certainly tackle those ideologies through education. And I think it's often argued that these cultural changes have just occurred naturally, and therefore you're tyrannical if you try and oppose them, but actually they haven't occurred naturally. In a historical context, they've occurred very, very quickly, and they've occurred because of the insidious tactics, I think, of neo-Marxists. Sorry,
Joel, while I was talking there was one thing that was a bit which I forgot. The laws have been, one example of how the laws have been used to actually suppress our free speech. The Christian Institute is at the moment lobbying. There's a bill going through Parliament, or being revised, Section 5, and basically, some street preachers have been out in the streets preaching and said that homosexuality is sinful. Right, that's a statement, and that is a moral statement. That is somebody's belief based on their holy book, and that's what they're saying. Now, Section 5 actually gives the police a right to actually come and stop you if they say, this person has found that offensive. Now, that is an undermining of free speech, but it's being used as well to suppress any public discussion that might criticise homosexuality. And that's just one example about homosexuality. but it's also used in other contexts.
Absolutely. Whether that I can impute conscious motive to the police officers, I don't know, but I'm sure if a Christian were insulted in that way for their beliefs, there wouldn't be the same intervention. I can remember there was an example in the Mail where a man held up a placard which said, "Stop homosexuality." He was actually assaulted by some demonstrators, but he was the one who was arrested. I didn't know, really?
Sorry, he wasn't beaten to death, sorry. But as a result of that, he died.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
So, no.
Harry Hammond, I think his name.
Sounds right. So we've got another question.
Yeah, there's a well-known pop singer with his love that's adopted a baby. Now that baby's not going to know a mother's love. And he's going to be brought up to think that he's all right with men, whereas he's going to be alienated against women, isn't he?
Quite possibly. He might have an androgynous view of gender, because he will have men, I don't know them very well, perhaps they're acting in a feminine way, so he might have an unusual view of women. And as you say, he won't know the mother either. So no, it's not an ideal situation, in my view.
Yeah, I picked one thing out from the lecture which I found interesting. You say that 68% of people who are cohabiting or together are abused by the benefit system. Basically, you know, they're penalised by the benefit system. Can you give me any examples of that? And what sort of way?
Yeah, that's from the Institute of Fiscal Studies. So if you go through that, it'll show you in more detail. It'll go through the various tax benefits that are available to either cohabitees or single people. I think essentially the issue is if you're on a relatively low wage now, you're worse off than somebody on benefits. That's the central issue, and that's the reason for it. So that issue will probably be more pertinent in the more old industrialised areas with the decline in manufacturing.
You get more benefits being a man and a woman living together, not married, than if you got married, you would lose benefits. And so it
why
encourages-
is that? How would you lose benefits in that sense? Is it tax?
Can I just say as well about the ultimate consequences of the destruction of the family and this move away from normative sexual relationships? We see a dramatic decline in the number of children being born to European families now. We see a sense of what they call alienation, enemy amongst the younger generation. They're not being integrated into society through the family, and they don't seem to belong to the nation anymore and to its history, and to feel part of an ongoing narrative. In a sense, they're a lost generation. So you have a declining birth rate, people who have lost their social compass and sense of belonging. This is the disintegration of a nation. Now that is an opportunity for another group to come into this nation and who has held on to traditional values, has held on to its refusal to accept homosexuality and the feminist agenda, namely Islam. Islam is growing rapidly in every European country. And one of the aspects of Islam, as it colonizes more and more of our society, is that it wants to bring into being Sharia law, because it can't accept these laws which are against the normal moral teachings of man, of all civilizations. There's such a thing called the Noahic, the laws of Noah, which were basically 8 laws which are fundamental to the well-being of every society. These agendas, liberal Marxist agendas, have undermined these fundamental laws and will lead to disintegration, chaos, and ultimately death of our society. But that won't mean liberation.